have 3 questions that I ask people when we're sort of designing it. How does this add value to my client's business? How does this make the people who are using that building's lives better, richer? What's the experience of users? And how is it saving the world? And if you can answer each of those 3 things, the third one might be just a little bit saving the world, but moving towards...
Okay, so it doesn't have to save the entire world.
It doesn't have to save the entire world. It has to contribute to saving the world. And so if you can answer those 3 things in your design narrative, that's a really strong design outcome, not just a grammable image.
Yeah, no, from that perspective, I totally agree, right? I think the hero shot has to be backed up by some form of evidence, right? So, for example, some of the concepts we're looking at together, like what would the cultural use of the White Bay Power Station be, right? A beautiful heritage asset for Sydney, for New South Wales, for Australia, that will be preserved for all time because it's been said so by the government.
Yeah.
There's an opportunity there to create something really special for Sydney, right? That is an arts and culture hub, which, as a city, if we're going to be a global city, we need to do more of. And Michael Castle, who's one of Australia's great producers, who was on this podcast not too long ago, before you and I started this conversation, and now we're on this journey around what it was, and you've done some work on what that hero shot is. And if you think about that started with the narrative, didn't it? Like, why do we need this in Sydney?
Yeah.
I use the line, what gets us on the bottom of London, Paris, Tokyo, New York, Sydney? How does Sydney get on that list of top global cities? And there's a bunch of ways that we can do that, right? One is, we attract the best talent, we create new industry, we do all these things. But I've increasingly over the last few years realized the role of arts and culture and creativity to the actual health of a city.
But the plans for White Bay do both of those things that you spoke about. They absolutely do attract the best talent, and they absolutely do create experience that makes Sydney, world class. And it is really interesting. The part of that work was sort of mapping the broader infrastructure of the industry that would come with a theatre. And, it just keeps going forever when you start to really look at what would be stuck on to that amazing theatre experience. And so the creation of those arts jobs and the ability to actually really make financially viable, great business around the arts is really exciting as well. And I'm sure that you're not drawing the same parallels that I am between the power station and the Western Sydney Airport. I was out there yesterday, so it's really front of mind.
Fresh in mind. Yeah. I'm out there next week.
And just the amount of jobs, the amount of new industry, the amount of opportunities that piece of infrastructure opens up to Western Sydney is just so rewarding. That's why we do what we do, because all of a sudden you're changing people's lives because of a piece of investment in infrastructure. And the power station is the same.
And the fascinating thing about the White Bay Power Station and the opportunity for an arts and culture hub there is Michael, like you, very creative person. I asked him similar questions. How did you end up running a production company? And his answer was, well, I wasn't good enough to be an actor.
He was an actor,
So I would...
Failed lawyer, failed actor.
Right, so we always start somewhere. But interestingly, you realise, as you hear him speak, that arts and acting and theatre is the same. Like, we only ever get to see the elite, but what's the pathway to get there? There is, you start in community theatre, you go from community theatre to, your sort of first grade, to use a sports analogy, and then you hit the Premier League. You have to have an ecosystem. And if you don't have a place in a city that allows that ecosystem, Dieter Colvin, who works with Michael, talks about the costume designers and the wig makers and the people who make set design, all of those jobs, makeup artists, it goes on. And in this city, compared to Melbourne or other cities around the world, or West End or anything like that ecosystem isn't quite right. And so I think the beauty of working with with an architect like you and your team, and Lend-Lease is a development group who thinks about cities in these ways, and a producer like Michael is, as a group, we can come together and help government and the public sector to achieve some of the outcomes that come out in this, whatever it is, the arts and culture strategy, or the infrastructure strategy, or the future transport strategy that was released recently. And so that's why I get excited about projects like this. And it's always a challenging process to seed an idea, just to bring it back to where we got to on narrative. And it's always a challenge to get the narrative right, because the forces of no in the world, whether it be a public sector department or a community that's concerned, or or a bunch of residents who might be concerned, or whatever it might be, or an overly aggressive media that tends to knock any idea on the head before it's even a thing because it sells newspapers. I'm going on a slight rant here. Is difficult. That is a difficult world that we live in now, to actually seed new ideas. Without narrative and without imagery and without effort and without passion, you don't get a coalition together to make things happen. So.